Tomorrow morning, a key hearing is going to happen before the trial resumes at 11 a.m. Judge Juan Merchan is going to consider accusations from prosecutors that Trump violated his gag order by attacking key witnesses in this case. And just tonight, a new comment from him in a new interview talking about not the witnesses, not the prosecutors, but the jury.
That jury was picked so fast, 95% Democrats. The area is mostly all Democrat. You think of it as just a purely Democrat area. It's a very unfair situation, that I can tell you.
A big question right now is whether or not prosecutors will bring up that comment tomorrow, as they are already claiming Trump violated the gag order at least 10 times, and they want to fine him $1,000 each time he does so. Joining me tonight, retired Judge Judge Cordell, who spent 19 years on the bench in California and is now a source regular. Judge, you know, I'm reading from the gag order directly right now, and it says making or directing others to make public statements about any prospective jurors or any juror in this criminal proceeding is a violation of this gag order. What do you say?
If you're talking about the comment he made today, I think he's got a problem. Just saying, well, they're Democrats, 95%, itself doesn't seem like it's violating the order. He's just making a comment about demographics. I don't even know that that's accurate. I think he's made it up. But the point is, he's sending a message to his MAGA base that who are not Democrats that this is bad, that these folks, 95% of them are bad. And so I think he has a big problem. It's not going to come up tomorrow. It's unlikely that it will, because it isn't a part of the motion that's before the judge tomorrow. So I think the prosecutor would have to file another motion about this particular violation.
Okay, so for what does come up tomorrow, all of these statements of him and the witnesses, how do you believe the judge, what does the judge do here? How does he decide on this?
Right. So tomorrow is a criminal proceeding. It's a criminal contempt. And that means that the prosecutor who has filed this motion is asking the judge to find beyond a reasonable doubt 3 things. And this is for each violation: that there was a legitimate order, the gag order. Secondly, that Donald Trump had notice of it, had knowledge of it, which he did. And third, that he knowingly and willfully violated that order. So those are the 3 things that have to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt for each violation. And it is up to the judge. This is not a jury issue. It's up to the judge to determine if indeed those violations have been established beyond a reasonable doubt. When that happens, and should it happen, and I think it likely will, then the judge has 3 options. The purpose of contempt is to deter conduct and also to punish the conduct that when the order is violated. So the judge can impose a fine. In New York, it's up to $1,000 per violation. The judge can order jail time, incarceration, up to 30 days for each violation, or put them together. So the maximum could be 300 days in jail if there are 10 violations, and then $10,000 total.
But I mean, if you're watching this tonight, and we've seen already how Trump has kind of handled this, I mean, how does the judge realistically do that in this case? I mean, obviously, he's got a lot to balance here in the way of how he handles this.
Right. So the fine is easy, and the fine is not going to be a deterrent at all. I think that Donald Trump would go to his MAGA base and have them raise the money and pay it. The other issue is imprisonment, incarceration in jail. And if the judge were to say, okay, you're going to jail, that would delay the trial. It would just put a hold on it. So my view, if I were the trial judge hearing this and did find a violation, and I decided that incarceration would be the way to deter it, I think what I would do is stay any kind of sentence, maybe hold up on it until the end of the trial, and then decide what kind of jail time I would impose. And a lot would depend upon how Trump reacted during the course of the trial. So I could hold him in contempt and say, I'm going to send you to jail, and then wait until the end of the trial to impose a jail sentence.
Will we know tomorrow what the judge decides?
Yes, the judge will decide the contempt. I mean, that's
Okay.
why he's having the hearing. And it's not going to be a long one. And by the way, it's a criminal proceeding, so Donald Trump has the right against self-incrimination. He can take the Fifth and not have to say anything, or he could be asked by the judge to explain why he posted on his website and on social media all of these things that are clearly in violation of the gag order.
Judge Ladoris Hazard Cordell, great to see you again, and we'll see what the judge decides tomorrow. Thank you.